Cruise lines track this now, and most passengers have no idea it's even happening. Not just your drinks, not just your spending, and not just where you go on board. They're tracking patterns, behavior, and how you react when things don't go perfectly. And here's the part that matters. This information doesn't disappear when the cruise ends. It influences how you're treated on board, what offers you see, and how problems get handled in real time. Most people think cruising is still simple. Swipe your card, enjoy the ship, go home. But cruising has quietly changed because today, two passengers on the same ship paying the same fare can have completely different experiences. And most of the time, they don't even realize why. In this video, I'm going to show you what cruise lines actually track now, the things passengers never connect together. And then at the end, I'll share the smart cruise secrets that experienced passengers use to turn this system in their favor, without breaking rules, without being pushy, and without spending more money. One of those secrets alone can change how your entire cruise goes. And almost nobody talks about it, so if you've ever felt like some passengers get better treatment, complaints don't always get handled the same, or cruising just feels different than it used to, you'll want to watch this all the way through. Let's start with the first thing cruise lines are tracking now. Number 1, your movement patterns on board. Cruise lines don't just notice where you go on a ship, they notice how you go there. Are you the type who leaves the cabin once in the morning and doesn't reappear until dinner? Or the type who wanders the ship like you're doing a casual house inspection, popping into lounges, walking the deck, circling back, disappearing, then reappearing again 10 minutes later? That movement tells them a lot more than people realize. Every time you swipe your cruise card, open the app, or move between areas, it quietly builds a picture of how engaged you are with the ship. Not in a creepy movie way, more like, is this person actually enjoying themselves, or are they hiding from the buffet? And here's the funny part. Two passengers can pay the same price, sleep in the same cabin, and order the same drinks. But if one of them moves around the ship like they own the place, and the other treats the cabin like a bunker, they're logged very differently behind the scenes. This isn't about safety. No one is watching you jog laps on the promenade deck thinking, suspicious. It's about patterns. Cruise lines want to know if you're active, curious, and likely to engage, or if you're the kind of passenger who only emerges when something goes wrong. Your movement patterns help them predict how you'll behave later in the cruise, especially if there's a delay, a line, or a small problem that needs fixing. And yes, they really do notice. Number 2, what you walk past without buying. Cruise lines don't just track what you spend money on. They also notice what you almost spend money on. Every time you wander into a shop, hover near the bar, scan a menu, or stand there pretending to just look while actually doing mental maths, that moment counts. You didn't buy anything, but the interest was logged. And if you do this once, it means nothing. Everyone window shops on a cruise. But if you keep circling the same places, the same bar, the same boutique, the same specialty restaurant menu, without ever pulling the trigger, that pattern quietly adds up. From the cruise line's point of view, you're not invisible. You're interesting. You're someone who's tempted but hesitant. Someone who might spend if nudged the right way. And that's valuable information. This is why some passengers suddenly get very specific offers, discounts that feel oddly well-timed, or last-minute prompts that seem to read their mind. It's not magic. It's just you pacing past the gelato counter 4 times, pretending you don't want gelato, and the cruise line noticing. Number 3, how fast you respond to offers. Cruise lines don't just care if you respond to offers. They care how quickly you respond. That little notification on the app, the pop-up about a drink deal, the message suggesting a spa special for today only, whether you open it straight away, 3 hours later, or never at all, quietly tells them what kind of passenger you are. Some people tap everything instantly. Others ignore notifications like they're unread emails from 2016. And yes, the system notices the difference. Fast responders are seen as engaged and impulsive. Slow responders are seen as cautious. And the people who never open anything, they slowly stop getting the good stuff altogether. What's funny is that you don't even have to buy anything for this to matter. Simply opening the offer, scrolling a little, and closing it tells the system, I'm paying attention. Ignoring it completely tells them, don't bother next time. So if you've ever wondered why your travel companion gets better deals, better timing, or oddly specific suggestions while your app stays suspiciously quiet, it might be because they actually tap the notifications instead of pretending they don't exist. Before we continue, because some of the things coming up next really do surprise people, if you're finding this interesting, please take a second to like the video and subscribe. And I'm genuinely curious, have you noticed any of these things happening on your own cruises? Maybe certain offers showing up at strange times, or different passengers getting treated very differently? Let me know in the comments, because once you start paying attention to this stuff, you can't unsee it. All right, let's keep going. Number 4, your complaint style. Cruise lines don't just track what you complain about, they track how you complain. Two passengers can report the exact same problem, the same noise, the same delay, the same cabin issue, and still end up logged very differently behind the scenes. One sounds calm, clear, and reasonable. The other sounds stressed, emotional, or angry. Same issue, different tone. And that tone matters more than people think. If you complain early, explain the problem clearly and treat it like a fixable issue, it's usually logged as preventative. If you wait, escalate, or sound like you've been storing up frustration since day one, it starts to look like compensation seeking. The funny part is that most passengers aren't trying to be difficult. They're just tired, hungry, or annoyed because the lift stopped on every deck except theirs. But the system doesn't see context, it sees patterns. Over time, those patterns influence how quickly issues get resolved, how much flexibility staff are allowed to offer, and how future interactions are handled. So yes, complaining is allowed. Complaining loudly, late, or repeatedly is what quietly changes how you're treated next. Number 5. Your spending rhythm. Cruise lines don't just care how much you spend, they care how you spend it. There's a big difference between someone who splurges once and disappears and someone who spends small amounts steadily throughout the cruise. A coffee here, a drink there, maybe a photo or a snack. Nothing dramatic, just consistent. From the cruise line's point of view, steady spenders are predictable, and predictable passengers are easier to market to, easier to keep happy, and easier to retain. The person who blows the budget on day 3 and then spends the rest of the cruise staring at their cruise card like it personally betrayed them? Not as useful. What's interesting is that 2 passengers can spend the exact same total amount by the end of the cruise, but if one spreads it out and the other dumps it all at once, they're treated very differently in the system. So if you've ever wondered why someone who doesn't spend that much still seems to get better offers or nicer treatment, it's often because their spending looks calm and consistent instead of chaotic. Number 6, how you interact with the crew. Cruise lines don't just track what you do, they quietly notice how you interact with the people working on board. You don't need to be best friends with the crew or tip like a billionaire for this to matter. It's the small stuff. Saying hello, using someone's name, asking instead of demanding, treating people like humans instead of walking help desks. Those interactions get noticed. Not in some formal report writing way, but in patterns. Crew log mental notes and sometimes actual notes about passengers who are easy to deal with and passengers who aren't. And here's the slightly uncomfortable truth. Crew members talk to each other, not in a gossip way, but in a just a heads up way. That information influences how quickly problems get fixed, how much effort goes into helping, and whether someone quietly goes the extra mile for you. Most passengers think perks only come from spending money. In reality, a calm, respectful interaction can be just as powerful as a big tip, and a lot cheaper. Number 7, how you behave when things get chaotic. Cruise lines pay close attention to how passengers act when something doesn't go smoothly. A delayed boarding, a tender running late, elevators packed like a game of human Tetris. These moments are stress tests, and they show staff a lot about you very quickly. Some passengers handle it quietly. They wait, adjust, and carry on. Others pace, complain, argue with staff who didn't cause the problem, or try to push ahead because they're just asking a quick question. And yes, those reactions get noticed. Not because cruise lines are judging your personality, but because these moments predict how much attention you're likely to need later. Someone who stays calm during a delay is seen as low maintenance. Someone who escalates instantly is flagged as potentially exhausting. The funny part is that people who stay relaxed during chaos often end up getting helped quietly once things settle down. The loud ones feel heard in the moment, but don't always benefit long-term. So when things get messy on a cruise, it's not just about surviving the delay. It's about what your reaction quietly says about you. And this isn't just theory either. Like, this kind of thing actually happens. There was a cruise where a delay turned the atrium into chaos. Lines backed up, people got impatient, voices got raised, and before anyone realized what was happening, a full argument broke out near the bar. Drinks were thrown. Security rushed in. Everyone nearby suddenly became very interested in finding the nearest exit. From the passenger point of view, it probably felt like a moment that just got out of hand. From the cruise line's point of view, it was a behavior incident. After situations like that, the people involved don't just get told to calm down and move on. Names are taken, cabins are logged, cruise cards are flagged, and in plenty of real cases, passengers involved in incidents like this have been removed from the ship or placed on lifetime bans with that cruise line. That's the part people don't expect. What feels like a bad 5 minutes can turn into a decision that follows you forever, and it almost always starts during moments of congestion, delays, long lines, crowded spaces, when tempers are already high. So if you know crowds push your buttons or you've got a short fuse, cruises are one place where it really pays to pause before you react, because they're watching those moments more closely than you think. Number 8, the small rules you quietly ignore. Cruise lines aren't just watching for big, dramatic rule breaks. They notice the tiny ones, the ones most people don't even think count. Wearing the wrong thing into a dining room and hoping no one says anything. Bringing food where it's not meant to go. Cutting through restricted areas because everyone else is doing it. Nothing serious. Nothing worth security getting involved over. On their own, these things don't matter. But patterns do. Someone who pushes small boundaries over and over again starts to stand out. Not as a troublemaker, more as someone who tests limits. And that's the kind of passenger cruise lines quietly keep an eye on, especially later in the sailing. The funny part is that most people doing this don't even realize they're doing it. They're not trying to be difficult. They're just tired, relaxed, and thinking cruise rules are more like polite suggestions. Unfortunately, the system doesn't see it that way. Enough tiny, harmless moments can add up to a very clear picture of how likely you are to ignore instructions when something bigger happens. Number 9. Loyalty without leverage. Cruise lines absolutely track loyalty, but not in the way most people think. A lot of repeat cruisers assume that sailing again and again automatically puts them in a better position. That being loyal, polite, and never causing problems means the cruise line will quietly reward them. In reality, there's a group of passengers who cruise often, follow every rule, never complain, and never ask for anything. And they're almost invisible in the system. They don't flag as a problem. They don't flag as high value. They just exist. And because they never push back, never question anything, and never ask for small fixes or perks, the system learns that they'll accept whatever happens without needing much attention. It's a strange irony of cruising. The passengers who are the easiest to deal with often get the least. Loyalty only helps if you actually use it. Otherwise, it just tells the cruise line you're low maintenance, and low maintenance passengers don't trigger extra effort. Number 10. What you do in the final 2 days. Most passengers mentally check out during the last couple of days of a cruise. Bags start appearing in hallways, routines fall apart, and people go into just get me home mode. Cruise lines don't. The final 2 days are when your behavior is watched the closest. Late complaints, sudden attitude changes, last-minute frustration over things that were fine all week, even how you handle disembarkation instructions. All of it gets logged as part of your final impression, and here's what surprises people. This isn't about fixing things before you leave. It's about deciding whether you're worth keeping happy next time. Passengers who stay calm, finish the cruise smoothly, and don't suddenly explode at the finish line are often tagged as easy to retain. Passengers who unravel right at the end, even after a great week, can undo that entire impression in 48 hours. It's like a job interview where the interviewer remembers how you walked out of the room more than how you walked in. So if you've ever wondered why some people get better post-cruise offers, nicer rebooking incentives, or smoother experiences on future sailing, a lot of that decision is made right at the end when most people stop paying attention. And that's the part almost nobody realizes is being tracked. This is the part of the video where things really start to get interesting, because once you understand what cruise lines are tracking, the obvious question becomes, okay, so how do smart passengers quietly use that to their advantage? These aren't tricks, they're not rule breaking, and they're not things cruise lines advertise anywhere. They're small, intentional moves that experienced cruisers use to get better treatment, smoother cruises, and fewer headaches, often without spending more money. Let's start with the first one. Cruise secret number 1. Spend early, even if it's small. One of the smartest things you can do on a cruise is spend something early, even if it's minor. Not a big splurge, not a package upgrade, just a small intentional purchase in the first day or two. A coffee, a drink, a snack, a photo, something that shows engagement. Here's why this matters. Cruise systems don't just look at how much you spend, they look at when you start engaging. Passengers who spend early are flagged as active and interested. Passengers who wait are treated as undecided. And the strange part is that this early signal often matters more than how much you spend later. Someone who buys 1 or 2 small things early in the cruise often ends up getting more targeted offers, better timed perks, and smoother service recovery than someone who spends big but only later on. It's not about money. It's about signaling. You're basically telling the system, I'm participating, instead of, I'm just here until something goes wrong. And that small signal can quietly shape the rest of your cruise. Cruise secret number 2, ask early, not often. One of the biggest advantages smart cruisers have is timing, not persistence. If you need something fixed, clarified, or adjusted, the best time to ask is early in the cruise, ideally in the first to 24 hours. Not because the staff are nicer then, but because your request is logged very differently. Early requests are seen as preventative. Late requests are often seen as reactive. There's a big difference between, hey, I just noticed something in the cabin, could you help me with it? And this has been bothering me all week, even if the issue is exactly the same. Another thing people don't realize is that repeating the same request to multiple staff members doesn't help. It actually works against you. The system doesn't see it as being thorough. It sees it as escalation. The smartest move is to ask once, calmly, early on, and then let it go. You're far more likely to get flexibility, faster fixes, and occasionally something extra without ever having to push. Cruises reward clarity and timing, not volume. Cruise secret number 3, be pleasantly memorable, not invisible. On a cruise, there's a big difference between being friendly and being forgettable. You don't need to chat for 10 minutes, overshare your life story, or tip like you've won the lottery. What actually works is being briefly, consistently pleasant. A smile, using someone's name once, a quick thanks, I appreciate it, then you move on. That tiny interaction does more than people realize. Crew deal with thousands of faces a week. The passengers who stand out just enough to be recognized, but not enough to be exhausting, are the ones who quietly get better help later. The goal isn't to become that guest. It's to become, oh yeah, I remember you. And funny enough, that often leads to faster service, a bit more effort when something goes wrong, or a small favor that wasn't technically required, but happened anyway. Think friendly neighbor energy, not main character energy. Cruise secret number 4. Use off-peak confidence. Most passengers ask for things at the worst possible time. They head to guest services when everyone else is already there. They ask questions during rushes. They bring up issues when staff are juggling 10 things at once. Smart cruisers do the opposite. They wait for calm moments, early morning, late evening, or that weird quiet window when everyone else is at lunch. Then they ask confidently like it's the most reasonable thing in the world. Not demanding, not apologetic, just calm and clear. The same request that gets brushed off during peak chaos often gets solved in 2 minutes during an off-peak lull. And sometimes you'll even get a little extra simply because you didn't add stress to an already stressed situation. Timing plus confidence beats urgency every time. Cruise secret number 5. Don't argue the first no. Most passengers hear no and immediately switch into debate mode. They explain. They justify. They try a different angle. They ask the same question again, but with a slightly different facial expression. Smart cruisers don't. When you get a polite no, the best move is often to accept it calmly and move on. Thank the staff member. Don't push. Don't sigh. Don't make it awkward. Just let it go. Here's why this works. A first no is often a default answer. It's safe, it follows policy, it ends the interaction quickly. But once you're logged as reasonable and easy, that same request sometimes gets revisited later without you even asking again, especially if circumstances change. And even if it doesn't, you've just done something important. You've avoided being flagged as persistent. Ironically, the passengers who argue the least often get more flexibility later, while the ones who push hardest burn their chances early. It's one of those cruise truths that feels backwards until you see it play out. Cruise secret number 6. Let the system see you briefly. A lot of passengers fall into one of two extremes. They either disappear completely, cabin, buffet, cabin, repeat, or they're everywhere all the time, like they're trying to win a scavenger hunt. Smart cruisers land right in the middle. They make short appearances in public areas. A quick drink, a short walk on deck, 5 minutes browsing a shop, then they're gone again. Why this works is simple. Cruise systems read this as engagement without neediness. You're active but not lingering, present but not demanding. It's a bit like showing up at a party, saying hello to everyone, and leaving before things get awkward. People remember you positively and nobody's tired of you. Passengers who vanish completely often get overlooked. Passengers who hover too long get noticed for the wrong reasons. The sweet spot is visibility with restraint. And yes, that actually affects how you're treated later, even if you never consciously notice it happening. Cruise secret number 7. Leave things unsaid when they don't matter. Not every irritation needs to be voiced. That chair that was taken, that tiny delay, that mildly annoying announcement at the worst possible time. Smart cruisers pick their moments. They understand that cruise lines track patterns, not perfection. One calm, reasonable request carries far more weight than 10 tiny frustrations stacked on top of each other. Passengers who comment on everything, even politely, slowly train the system to see them as high attention. Passengers who let small things go are seen as adaptable, flexible, and easy to keep happy. And here's the funny part. The passengers who complain the least about small stuff are often the ones who get the most help when something actually goes wrong. It's not about being silent. It's about being selective. Save your voice for the things that matter, and you'll be taken more seriously when you use it. Cruise secret number 8. Let staff offer, don't suggest. A lot of passengers accidentally talk themselves out of perks. They hint, they suggest, they say things like, "Is there anything you can do?" Or worse, "Other cruises did this for us." Smart cruisers don't plant ideas. They explain the situation clearly, then stop talking. When you leave space in the conversation, you give staff room to offer something instead of defend policy. And there's a big difference between those two. Once you suggest a specific perk, upgrade, or compensation, the answer often becomes a firm no, because now it's a request. But when you simply explain the issue and pause, staff can choose an option that fits within their flexibility without feeling boxed in. It's a bit like negotiating without negotiating. You're not pushing, you're not hinting. You're just calmly laying out the facts and letting the other person decide how to solve it. And oddly enough, that's when little extras tend to appear. Cruise secret number 9. Don't rush to be first. A lot of passengers think being first is always better. First off the ship, first in line, first to complain, first to demand an answer. Smart cruisers are rarely in a hurry to be first. Being first usually means crowds, pressure, stressed staff, and rigid answers. Being slightly later often means calmer environments, more flexibility, and people who actually have time to think. This shows up everywhere on a cruise. The first wave at guest services gets policy. The second or third wave often gets solutions. The first people off the ship deal with bottlenecks. The later ones walk straight through. It's funny because the passengers who look the most relaxed are usually the ones who aren't racing anyone. They're not late, they're just deliberately not early. And that small shift in timing can change how smooth the entire experience feels. Cruise secret number 10. Be the passenger they want to keep. Cruise lines don't just think in terms of single sailings. They think in terms of future behavior. Every interaction, every reaction, every small decision you make on board helps answer one simple question in their system. Is this a passenger worth keeping happy long term? The people who get the smoothest cruises aren't the loudest, the biggest spenders, or the ones who never complain. They're the passengers who are calm, engaged, reasonable, and predictable. The ones who ask when it matters, let things go when they don't, and treat the cruise like a shared experience instead of a personal battle. That's the profile cruise lines quietly protect. Once you fall into that category, little things start to happen. Problems get solved faster, staff are more flexible, offers feel better timed. The cruise just feels easier. Not because you gamed the system, but because you understand how it works, and that's the real secret most passengers never learn.